What's up, everybody? So, listen, us as horror fans, when it comes to franchises, we have such a closeness with the original. And oftentimes, by all accounts, the original is always better than the sequels, except for these movies. I'm going to talk about 5 movies that I think a sequel was better than the original. Let's go. All right, guys. So listen, I know we have loyalty to our original films, but let's be honest. Just because it's the first one doesn't necessarily make it the best. And I feel like I might hurt some feelings with some of these ones that I talk about because I'm going to talk about some classics here. But let's get started. I'm going to talk about 5 movies that I think the sequel was better. A sequel in the franchise is better than the original movie. So number 5, Annabelle Comes Home. Now, this is not about Conjuring, okay? Conjuring 2. Annabelle Comes Home is, I'm only going off the Annabelle franchise. So the introduction to Annabelle was not what I'm comparing it to. From the first Annabelle, I think in 2017, there was Annabelle Creation, and then Annabelle Comes Home. The first Annabelle was not very good. It was a pretty low bar for the franchise, and off of what they had in the for the brief time it was showed in the Conjuring series, or the Conjuring franchise, you would have thought that they would have come with a little bit more, but it wasn't very strong. Annabelle Creation was a little bit better, still not that strong. Annabelle Comes Home, however, was amazing. It was closer to the Conjuring movies that we're used to, where there's a solid family, solid story there, and it just builds up. A lot of solid jump scares they had. Again, a good story, a good ending, and it expounded on the legend and the lore of Annabelle. So for me, Annabelle Comes Home was much better, far better than the original Annabelle. So that's my 5th one. At number 4, all right, this might make people upset. The original the original Night of the Living Dead was great, a classic, absolutely. Dawn of the Dead in 1978 was better to me. It was a better movie than the original Night of the Living Dead. Couple of reasons. Number one, it had the advantage of color. Now, black and white films are they have been very successful, and they can be very effective. But when you're able to take that blueprint that was put there and add some color to it, it definitely helped, especially in this case. The story was deeper. The connection to the characters was deeper. What was so groundbreaking about Night of the Living Dead original was because it was so unique and so new at the time. But once it already set that groundwork, you only go up from here. And George Romero was an amazing film director. And to take despite how good Night of the Living Dead was, Dawn of the Dead was just that much better. It had solid jump scares. Again, it had a good story, very good characters, and there was more feeling in this movie. And then the inclusion of the zombies that we're learning, it kind of shows you what happens if zombies are around too long. You know what I mean? They're around for long enough time. It was a perfect continuation, and it didn't lose any steam. You know, a lot of sequels kind of seem to take a dip off the cliff. This one didn't. It continued the upward trajectory of what was started in Night of the Living Dead. So for me, Dawn of the Dead, 1978, was a better sequel and a better movie than the original Night of the Living Dead. That's my number 4. At number 3, I'm going to go with Paranormal Activity 3. Now, if you've seen my Paranormal Activity movie ranking from a few years ago, you guys know I put that one above the original. The original was one of the first movies that legitimately scared me, terrified me, and I have no shame in admitting that. I was scared for a good week or so. I mean, it was a very effective film, and it got me very good. Now, the third one did not have that same effect because I was so scarred from the first one. But much more happened in a much more within frequent spaces than the original. The original was effective because it felt so real. It felt like any house you can go to. The couple, Mika and Katie, or Kate, was it Katie? Katie felt like a legitimate couple, believable couple that you could see your significant other having that same kind of relationship with. And the scares they use are very practical. The same practicality of the scares was used in 3, but they had better the use of the lighting, the inclusion of the grandmother. The grandmother in 3 was terrifying all by herself. Um, just some of the scenes. I mean, the scene that sticks out of my mind when I forget the woman's name now because I haven't seen it in a while, but the woman sitting at the kitchen counter and that the sheet comes up behind her and then just disappears, and it was just so effective. What they did in this one was great, and then it just builds to a climax at the end. The last, I'd say 12, maybe 15, 12 to 15 minutes of the movie are incredibly intense, to the point where if someone was to ask me for the scariest movie like to watch, I would choose Paranormal Activity 3 before choosing 1, because since it's a prequel, you don't really need to know, a lot of the story to get into it, because it tells you about itself as it goes on. So for me, Paranormal Activity 3 was a much better film than Paranormal Activity the original. At number 2, another one that's going to be controversial, The Devil's Rejects. Say what you will about Rob Zombie. Either you absolutely love him or he's not your thing. The Devil's Rejects was far and above better than House of a Thousand Corpses. Why? House of a Thousand Corpses to me felt like a ripoff of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Same kind of concept. Now, granted, it's a different family, obviously. They're a little bit wackier in their dealings, and of course, frame by frame, it's not the same movie. But when you look at what was going on in each film, it felt very much so like it felt a retread of what we already saw, and it wasn't that scary. It was a little bit. It was odd. It was strange. It was that's what I would say. It was not that scary. Take Devil's Rejects, and put a spotlight on the Firefly family much more. You saw more personality out of them. Baby Firefly, Otis, Captain Spaulding. That movie made them horror icons in my estimation. House didn't really showcase the best of what they had to offer. Devil's Rejects did. And what I love about sequels is they don't ignore the original. Sheriff Wydell's brother in the first, and then Sheriff Wydell in the second, they carried along well. They didn't ignore and just pick it up to kind of act like the first never happened. That's another reason I like about it. It was very tense, and Otis is terrifying. He is ruthless, and just there is no safe space. There is no safe haven when it comes to him, and that is absolutely effective. So, I mean, for me, it's a no brainer. Now I know a lot of people. Again, there are some people that love Rob Zombie. Everything he did, he can't do any wrong in their eyes. And by no means am I saying that House was bad, but when you're a horror fan that's watched so many horror movies and you start to see something like that, there are other films that have come before it that you could say is kind of like that movie. Devil's Rejects, to me, I'm trying to search my discography in my head here, and I can't think of anything that was set in the same way Devil's Rejects was. And if there was something set like that, it was the personality the Firefly family that made it that next level. But I loved it. Not only is it better than House, it is the best movie that Rob Zombie ever did, in my estimation, or has done so far. I don't know if he's done yet or not, but what he's done so far, Devil's Rejects, is his like top level horror movie in my estimation. So that's my number two. And look, I'm just go all into it. I'm making people mad today, so we're just go into it. Number one, New Nightmare. New Nightmare was better than Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm sorry. I know people are probably upset about that. I love Nightmare on Elm Street. It was one of I can't remember exactly when I watched it for the first time, but it's a classic. And by saying something is better than that movie, don't get it the wrong way. I am not saying the movie was not good by any means, but the effects were better than New Nightmare. Freddy Krueger, the most important part of it, was much scarier than Freddy Krueger and the original. The addition of Dylan and the fact that he was trying to to take over Dylan, a little kid, that's another thing that make it scarier. The fact that he was, for the sake of the New Nightmare movie, he was essentially real to the point where Heather Langenkamp, Robert Englund, Wes Craven, all the ones that were behind the making of the original were now being plagued by their own creation in real life. I mean, what more can you say? Again, I touch on the effects. There were some things and some scenes in the original that, if you watch today, are kind of goofy. Let's be honest. You know, it's hard to say. It's hard to say of us diehard horror fans. We love the 80s and we love our 80s horror, and we think 80s horror is the greatest. And for the most part, it is. But when you watch some of those things today, it just doesn't hold up. But then again, you go and watch New Nightmare today, and it holds up very well. But again, of anything else, the scariest, if you're going to do a franchise wrapped around a killer, the best version of that franchise should be the best version or scariest version of that killer. And there is no other Nightmare on Elm Street film that shows. Now, this is going to get me into trouble too, but if there is one other, New Nightmare, I think, is still the greatest for sure, because Freddy is the scariest. But another hard truth, Freddy Krueger in the remake, you say what you will about it should have been Robert. I get it. I'm a Robert Englund fan. I've met this man plenty of times. I'm a huge fan of Robert Englund. The way that Freddy was portrayed in the remake was a scarier version than he was portrayed in the original. Okay? That's an argument for a different time. In this case, I'm telling you, in my estimation, New Nightmare is a better movie than the original Nightmare on Elm Street. That's my 5. I wonder what you guys thought. Did you disagree? Did you agree? What were some other movies that you saw, some other sequels in franchises that you thought were better than the original? There were a few more, and I might do another video about it, down the line. Those are the 5 that came to my head right now. Anyways, thanks for joining me, guys. See you guys next time.